Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. I'm Dave DuFour here with Es Baraheni and our special guest, John Hollinger, for our trade deadline recap wrap-up show. John, kind of not a dud of a day. There's been a lot of stuff happening, but not the major ground-shaking move that we anticipated. Giannis is going to stay put. How do you feel about the Bucks keeping Giannis?
I had always thought that they would have better offers this summer than they would get right now. It's unfortunate for Giannis because it burns another year of his prime. But the fact of the matter is the Bucks have a duty to their franchise and their future to secure the best deal. If you look at it, between Oklahoma City, San Antonio, and Houston, at least one of them is definitely going out in the second round or earlier. And they will definitely be disappointed in that, and they will definitely reevaluate what they're doing. And they are the three teams who can blow away any of these offers we've seen from Golden State or Miami. So I do think it's worth Milwaukee's while to wait. That offer from Miami will still be there in the summer, but they might also have much better stuff on the table from a Houston or a San Antonio especially.
How do you think this factors into Milwaukee's, I guess, tankathon that might happen in the second half of the season, especially because Giannis, for all intents and purposes, is trying to come back and play?
I think Milwaukee has to be all in on that tank. They can still get the number 2 pick in the draft, although they cannot get number 1 because the Pelicans are also so bad. So Milwaukee has the lesser of their own pick or New Orleans, but they can still basically lock that into being a top 7 or top 8 pick in a great draft and still have a pretty good chance to end up in the top 4, even though it's the lesser of the 2 picks. It's kind of amazing.
So you just mentioned that, and we just saw Ivica Zubac get traded to the Indiana Pacers for 2 first-round picks, one of those picks being the 2026 Pacers pick, which is top 4.
Excuse me.
Bless you. Top 4 protected and protected 10 to 30.
Yes.
1, have you ever seen a trade like that before? And 2, is this going to be the most insane draft lottery ever?
Yes, because we did one. And there's been a couple others like that. We did a trade with Cleveland in December of 2012 when I worked for the Grizzlies, where we salary dumped Maurice Spates and Wayne Ellington and sent Cleveland a pick that was protected 1 through 5 and 20 through 30, I want to say, for a period of like 3 years before the bands expanded, because Cleveland wanted to give itself a chance at a lottery pick, and we didn't want them to end up in the top 5. So that has happened before. It's rare. It is more rare now because you don't see teams extending the protections out for 3, 5, 7 years anymore because it's just the Stepien rule handcuffs are just too tight with that. So nobody wants to do that anymore. This is a rare exception because it only applies for 1 year, and then it skips ahead to a much later year when the Clippers reason that the Pacers will be maybe outside their champion window and have a better chance of conveying a high pick. So I thought it was a really creative solution for both sides where the Pacers could protect themselves from not having traded Darren Peterson for Ivica Zubac, basically, but the Clippers still give themselves the best chance at getting a true high pick for Zubac, and basically 2 because they have another unprotected coming from Indy also. So I thought it was a really creative and fair solution that the two sides came up with.
What trade is going to make the biggest difference for the rest of the season as we're looking ahead to the playoff race and the push to the finals? Is there anything that stands out to you as far as a team that, they solved their problems or they really put themselves over the hump?
Here's one where it's like, did they solve their problem? Kevin Huerter going to Detroit. I mean, the Pistons are the 1 seed in the East right now, and they have enough of a margin that they're probably going to stay there. But the lack of shooting has been glaring. So you bring in Kevin Huerter, who was a knockdown shooter for the first 4 years of his career, then hasn't been able to make anything for the last 3. And you're hoping that he can kind of refine his mojo on a team that might get him more open shots than he had in, say, Chicago or Sacramento. It's a really interesting play by the Pistons, but it's one of those where you say, I don't know how this is going to work out.
Yeah, it felt like they took, I don't know if pragmatic is the word, but like they didn't make that big splash trade that people were expecting, or Michael Porter Jr.
Well, they kept the powder dry.
Yeah, they kept the powder dry for this summer.
Them going for Porter was the move I think everyone sort of was wondering if they'd make. The other thing I wonder about, so Luke Kennard got traded for a second-round pick. Yeah. And he's definitely a better shooter than Huerter. So like Detroit not wanting to bring in Kennard and wanting Herter instead, that surprised me, let's say.
Another surprise trade, I think, for a lot of people was Anthony Davis to the Washington Wizards. Is that perhaps the most impactful future trade, or is there another trade out there that you think of and say that's the one?
I think the Zubac trade is the most impactful future trade because the Pacers are going to be really good next year. I mean, they solved their center problem with Miles Turner. They get Halliburton back next year. They maybe get a high pick in the draft again. I think that in terms of impacting next year, because realistically the Wizards still aren't going to be good next year. Right, they might be okay. I mean, their kind of long-term roadmap was that they would start being respectable next year. I think Trae Young and Anthony Davis get you to respectable, certainly, but I don't think they're at a level where they can carry you to the top of the East by themselves. They're going to need a lot of help from the younger players that Washington has brought in, and I still think those guys are a year or two away from really doing that. So wasn't totally shocked by the Davis deal just because the price was, pretty cheap at the end of the day. Where I will be more shocked is if the Wizards go all in on extensions for these two guys. I'm really interested to see what their contractual situations are going to be going forward, because that to me is really where the rubber hits the road as to whether Washington made a short-sighted move or a really sharp opportunistic move.
Are you bored of talking about the Grizzlies yet?
Not yet. I mean, it's they did a full reset, and it's basically like Ja Morant's unreliability forced them to trade the two reliable guys, right? Yeah. With Desmond Bane and Jaren. So it's unfortunate that way. They're doing a full reset. I'm sure they're going to move Ja at some point now. I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense now. Just fully pivot toward younger guys. I'm interested to see what they do in the offseason. I was a little surprised they didn't move Ty Jerome after the way he's played since returning from injury, or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Maybe there was just no market for him at $21 million. But I think there's going to be more opportunities for the Grizzlies to do more things, and I think they now are one of several teams who are trying to kind of moonwalk backwards in the standings into this draft lottery. So it's going to be an interesting tanking season.
To the bottom.
Race to the bottom.
Be like a quarter of the league.
Yeah.
John, I have to ask you, there were three teams that didn't make a trade: Miami, San Antonio, and Houston. Are you surprised that any of those teams didn't make a move?
I was. Yes. I think Terry Rozier's situation probably was an obstacle for Miami in terms of making a deal with his expiring contract.
Right.
And so that was their best opportunity, I think, to do something. The other thing they could have done is something with Andrew Wiggins, but I think it would have been potato for potato at the end of the day if they did something for him. I just don't know if it would have really, rocked Miami's world or really changed everything. And I think they just wanted to stay put for Giannis and be able to come back and attack the Giannis thing in the summer. Houston, a little surprised because once you push the chips in for Kevin Durant, it's like, okay, what are we doing here?
You have your window now, right?
Yeah, I thought maybe they had an opportunity to move Dorian Finney-Smith and get another productive player, especially another shooter. Their lack of spacing has been really glaring in their losses. Kevin Durant is shooting all jump shots. He's had a tremendous year, but he literally never shoots at the rim because it's impossible to get there. And I think when you already have Şengün and Amen Thompson, like, you need knockdown shooting around those guys, and they're sending out Josh Okogie. I mean, no disrespect to him, he plays really hard, but like he's not the guy that teams are terrified of as a floor spacer, and so that surprised me.
Yeah, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about some of the bad trades or the confusing ones. Okay, John, while we got you here, I know you like to dish out the pain when it's necessary. What's the most confusing trade that's happened this season?
Confusing.
Just one where you just looked at it and you were like, what are they thinking?
I didn't understand Brooklyn's Hunter Tyson trade at all. It was like, you're going to trade a pick in the 40s in this draft to get a 2032 second, and you're doing Denver a favor at the same time? Like, what was that? In terms of bigger swings, Sacramento's deal for DeAndre Hunter, you sort of understood in a way, but it's like you have the worst record in the league. You need to be tanking. You got rid of 2 bad contracts, but you had to give up Keon Ellis to do it, who is a guy you should have extended before the season in the first place. That was a puzzling deal.
I mean, listen, anytime you can send out the best player and draft picks in a trade, isn't that kind of like you have to do it? The Kings have been confusing. My entire life, it feels like.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised by this at all.
I'm also surprised a little bit by the fact that they didn't move some of their other guys in Domantas Sabonis, DeMar, Malik Monk. I know it's tough to find a package that makes sense for those guys, but why do you think they couldn't get anything done for those?
I think the only real thing they had on Sabonis was the Toronto trade, and they rightly decided that Jakob Poeltl's contract was so bad that they just could not do it. So I'm not going to dunk on them for that one. And the fact is, I mean, they're terrible enough right now. Right? Like they don't really need to shed talent because they're like 12-43 or whatever it is already.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is a limit to how much you can,
bad you can get.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you can argue they should have kept Schroeder, right?
What? All right. Before we get to the worst trade, I want to give you a chance. What's the best trade outside of the Pacers trade? Because it feels like you really like that trade. What's the best trade that has happened today?
Atlanta got Jock Landale for nothing. I mean, it's a small trade, but like that was amazing that they were able to get him for absolutely nothing.
Feels like he fits on a bunch of teams too, right?
Yeah, right. And I mean, the Hawks had no size, especially with Porzingis being so unreliable. So that one made sense. Golden State with the Porzingis deal. I mean, I guess I sort of get it. I mean, I think the thing they really take away from that is there just wasn't any kind of market for Jonathan Kuminga at all. This has kind of been the year of teams overplaying their hands, and that was another example. Chicago pivoting too late to the tank, just in time for an awful 2027 draft. That one stood out to me. Not the deals they made today, but the strategic choices over the last 2 years that led them to this point. I just think the overarching vision was kind of a fail there.
Okay, what is the worst trade? Not just of today, of the trade deadline, of this entire season. What has been the worst trade in your opinion?
Well, there were only, I think, 2 trades before this week, right? The Trae Young trade was the only trade the first 4 months of the season. So we're basically down to this week. Chicago taking on the $6 million of Gershon Yabusele for next year without even getting a pick or anything. I'm flabbergasted by that. Yeah, because the Knicks were jonesing to move off that money, and so I just don't understand that deal at all, especially in light of all the other moves Chicago was making to get second round picks left and right. And now it's like, I guess we need a big for our play-in run, right? Was that why they did it? I don't know. I'm trying to find some kind of logic here. Let's just eat his $6 million for next year and not ask for anything in return. I don't know. I'm
they're not making a play-in run, are they? Like, I mean,
no,
they're the Bulls. They always are.
Lorenzi's sitting right over here to my right. The Bulls aren't making a play-in run, I don't believe. Okay, apparently there's more to come on Yabusele. John, that's producer Joel Lorenzi sitting over in the corner.
Okay, well, if they are buying him out and getting that money removed next year, that obviously is a different situation. That's the thing that everyone speculated on when the deal was made, because they were like, how are there no draft picks in this? So we'll see how that turns out.
Is the second apron, is it been the driving force, you feel like, behind a lot of the moves that we've seen?
It's been a force behind some of the moves we haven't seen, certainly. I also think like the Harden for Garland deal, I think that came about in part because literally the only 2 guys that could be traded for was each other, based on the salary constraints that each side was operating within. So James Harden just had to take a very small amount of his trade kicker to make his salary the exact same amount, but no more than Darius Garland's. And there we are. And it's somehow, the Clippers still ended up getting, I can't remember if they got all the way under the tax or just were still like $1 million short, but they ended up saving money between that and the Zubac deal and the Cavs with their second apron situation. They were able to trade Garland for another player of roughly equal caliber. I mean, people will debate this obviously going forward. I thought it was a really interesting trade. I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about it. Cleveland definitely shortened their sort of window of excellence here by adding 10 years. Yeah. And James Harden is like not historically a massive playoff performer. On the other hand, Garland was to the point where they couldn't necessarily rely on him. So I sort of understand the logic there. So there's a lot of ways you can spin that one.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated to see from the Clippers' perspective how they move forward too, just because of the OKC pick situation that's going on. They didn't trade Kawhi Leonard, but now they have Darius Garland, they have Ben Mathurin, they have these 2 Pacers picks. It just feels like they are completely headed in a different direction. If you were to zoom out and look at the trade deadline and the trades that we've seen so far, what do you think the biggest takeaway is from how teams are moving? Obviously, the second apron is a factor, but we saw 2 rebuilding teams in the Jazz and the Wizards go out and make these big additions. What do you think the biggest takeaway is from the trade deadline this week?
The biggest takeaway is that teams understand that free agency just isn't a thing anymore. Like the Wizards had a bunch of cap room and they weren't going to be able to sign anybody with it, right?
Yeah.
Brooklyn arguably was looking at the same thing, although they didn't move nearly as aggressively necessarily. And so I think that's one thing. And then the other thing is you got to move off guys sooner. You can't overplay your hand. I mean, we saw so much of that this year. And I just think with the way the contract numbers are and the aprons and everything, you have to be a little more selective about who you pay, even if you're a quote unquote rich team that wants to shoot money at the fire hose. As eventually the second apron is going to get you, the repeater is going to get you, and you can't do that ad infinitum. So I think that's the real lesson. You can't just pay guys $40 million and figure you're going to be able to trade them later. It doesn't work like that anymore.
I'm looking at a team like the Toronto Raptors and how different their trade deadline could have worked if they, 1, did not extend Jakob Poeltl.
Absolutely.
And 2, if they had more expiring salary that they could play with. Could they have gotten involved for Jaren Jackson or Zubac or whoever, right?
Yep.
Just going to make you look ahead to the summer. Okay. How does this deadline affect this coming summer? Like, what teams do you feel like are going to be way more aggressive this summer because they weren't aggressive at the deadline?
Well, Miami and Golden State certainly top that list. Yeah. I would argue for Minnesota, too. I mean, we'll see. I think they're still really constrained. They just have no picks to trade, so it's hard for them. But they're definitely going to try. I think they may try something more radical than trading for Ayo Dosunmu, let's say.
Right.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on the Jared McCain trade? Because this was a guy that, about December of last year was probably leading the Rookie of the Year race. And now he's on the defending champions. What do you think about that move?
Yeah, it's interesting because he really just hasn't been good this year at all. He's played a little better the last couple weeks. I thought Philadelphia got about as good as return as they were ever going to get for him, given that he's locked in behind Maxey and Edgecombe definitely, and also Quentin Grimes for as long as you're there. Like, how much are you realistically going to get for your 4th guard? In his second year, you can still sell the upside. When he gets to his 3rd, 4th year and he's still your 4th guard, it gets really hard. So I think Philadelphia was right to cash that stock in the way they did, because I just don't think his value to the Sixers was just never going to be that high. Yeah. So I think getting assets and then being able to move forward and maybe getting another small forward, another power forward, whatever, is the better move for them.
And it was the opposite of what the Warriors did with Kuminga. I mean, to your point, they sold higher on McCain than they maybe would have if they wait. Kuminga probably goes for less than the Warriors could have gotten if they move him earlier in this entire process. You got any Kuminga takes in Atlanta?
Interested to see what happens. Seeing him outside Golden State, I think, is the question everyone's wondering about. Just what does he even look like? Is he any good? Like, we don't even know. Right? So, exactly. I do think, especially when Jalen Johnson is off the floor, Atlanta's on-ball shot creation still isn't that great, even after adding CJ. And having one more guy that can do that when Johnson isn't there is really important. And then the Hawks were just really small when Porzingis wasn't there. And getting Landale, getting Kuminga, like a forward with real size to him, I think that's going to help too.
Yeah, I think him and Jalen Johnson, at least on paper, I think it might look good together. All right, before we get out of here, give me your biggest loser and your biggest winner. And let's end with the winner because I like to go out on a positive note.
Biggest loser, I mean, in a way, it's Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you started with Luka and you ended with this. Like, okay, great. And then my biggest winner, I just really like what Indiana did. I think Zubac is on a great contract, has a couple years to run. He's not a flight risk. The Pacers are tax averse like that. They need a guy like that who makes that level of money. I thought that was absolutely the right move for Indiana to come back strong next year. I really like what they did.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John, for hanging out with us. Everybody, go and read all the trade deadline recap stuff from John Hollinger over at The Athletic. He's one of the best in the business at it.
Yes, sir.
For John Hollinger and Es Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour. This has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for hanging out with us.